Sir, shall we start?
Uh, yes, we can start. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I can hear you, sir.
Yeah, we are able to hear you, sir.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to extend thanks to the host, the Kerala State Electricity employees, for having me here on this webinar. It is really very a great honor for me. And the topic is also very pertinent, and I'd like to share my talk with a PowerPoint which I have prepared for this webinar. So just bear with me. I'll start the. I hope you can see the PowerPoint.
Yes, sir. I can see it.
Okay, good. So let me first give you the context of how the power sector has evolved over the years in this country. As we all know, earlier, the electricity was functioning as a vertical entity under the respective state electricity boards. However, the state electricity boards, they had different type of issues related to improving the accessibility of electricity in the remote areas, and then we're working on a very small level. As the country was developing, it was felt that the electricity being major source of energy for the economy, it has to be expanded. So the reform process was introduced with that concept, and Odisha was one of the first states to start with the reform process, and they unbundled the electricity board into generation, transmission, and distribution. So as we can see that that reform process further continued, and it was adopted at a national level, because electricity being a concurrent subject, all the states have to give their consent to participate in that arrangement. So it was introduced as Electricity Act in 2003, in which all the states decided to unbundle their respective SEBs into generation, which was to remain as a delicensed activity and open for public and private investment. This was necessary because we were having shortage of electricity in our country, and which was hampering the industrial development as well as other areas of the social and economic issues. Similarly, the transmission was also unbundled into carrier and content, and it was open for both the private and public investment. While distribution was retained as a natural monopoly in the public domain, and although there were provisions which were introduced for private licensing, parallel licensing, however, this option has rarely been exercised. And at the time of introduction of this 2003 unbundling, there were only few private distribution companies which were operating in the country, namely like in Calcutta, we had CESC, and in Bombay, we had Tata's. So there were very few distribution companies. So since 2003, with the opening up of generation, lot of investment started coming in, because we made certain clarification in our whole framework that we'll have two routes. One is Section 62 route, which will be the regulated tariff mechanism, and another will be Section 63 route, which will be for open market price discovery method. So primarily in the initial years, most of the power plants, including the state as well as independent power producing companies, IPPs, they set up the power plants under RTM or tariff competitive bidding routes. So by 2013, we had sufficient capacity in our country, which has given us some sort of confidence that yes, generation is now has reached a mature level, and now we are adding on to the capacity day by day. However, now with addition of more and more sources of electricity, we also had earlier the system of base load and peak system, which is gradually, which has transformed into flexible generation, flexible load, because the share of VREs, which is the wind and solar, is growing up rapidly. And currently, in capacity terms, it is roughly 34% of the electricity installed capacity. Although the contribution of this VRE in the total energy generated terms is still less than, say, 12-13%, but it is gradually increasing. And both public and private players have contributed to the generation. And currently, out of 475 gigawatts, the IPPs, which is the private, contribute roughly more than half, that is 54%. So they have become a significant player in the field of generation. While there are coming up, but there are differences, key differences in the challenge arise from their ownership, their governance, and market exposure, which will deal as we move forward. So we do have substantial capacity in the public, that is the government generating companies. However, they are mostly related to, thermal power plants or the hydroelectric power plant. The hydroelectric power plants cannot be shifted for any other considerations beyond the hydrological reasons. However, the thermal power plants, especially in the public sector, most of them have been located near either the coastal areas or the coal pit, but a substantial number of them have been also located at a place far away, either from the load center or from the pit head. So that uneconomical choice, which is the political reason for the site selection, causes some sort of economic burden on these public or the government generating stations, because either the transmission cost goes up or the coal freight cost goes up. So this is one issue which is going against the public generating companies. However, the private generating companies will always find they are located either near the coastal areas or near the coal pit head, etc., or near the load center. So they are economically positioned, unlike the state generating companies. Then another issue which is faced by the generating companies is, since they are supplying to their sister entity, the state distribution companies, and on the payment preference wise, it is always the IPPs which get the priority, because they have their PPAs drafted in such a way that they can, bargain a better treatment from the distribution companies. Another disadvantage with the state generating companies they face is that they have to keep on depending upon the budgetary support for revamping or modernization or capacity expansion or even major repairs, etc. So because equity part has to come from the promoter, and the government is the promoter, and since they are unable to generate sufficient internal resources, they keep on asking the government for budgetary support, so which comes with a lag, and by the time it comes, there are issues related to price escalation and the delay in implementation of project, which is affecting the state generating companies. Then another issue which they face is that the cost recovery is always delayed, because the true up of accounts of the generating companies is getting delayed, audits and others. Sometimes you'll find that there are more than 2-3 years lapses when the audit takes place, and without audit, the true up accounts are not there. So whatever is legitimately due to them gets delayed, although they get some sort of carrying charges over it, but nonetheless, meanwhile, they have to borrow that deficit from the banks, and which is at the higher cost. And these disadvantages mostly are not associated with the private generating companies, because they are not solely dependent upon the DISCOM's PPA. They also sell substantial power either to the exchanges, or their DISCOMs is also, they are well spread over the other states. So that diversification hedges their risk. And they always negotiate better PPA condition and securitize their outstanding through escrow or letter of credit arrangement. The recently notified about 3-4 years back, the government notified the late payment surcharge rules, which also protects their interest in payment, and that acts as a favorable tool for them. And in their PPAs, they have always this deemed generation clause. That means even if the power is not off taken, they get their fixed charge paid. So financial challenges. Next is their operational efficiencies. Now, because I mentioned there are various issues related to the finances, the operating costs or the energy charges of these generating companies are a bit higher. And because of this, they get placed lower in the MOD stack. And therefore, that is a disadvantage to them because they are unable to fully optimally recover their capacity in an economic term. Then because most of these plants were set up earlier, they are old power plant, they are slightly inefficient as compared to the newer plants which have been set up in the private sector. And there are often related issues related to the coal supply. Even if the linkages are there, they will not get adequate quantity of coal. Then availability of wagon and fuel supply agreement is there, but all sort of issues come up, and coal grade slippage. So this problem adds on to the challenges faced by the generating companies. However, the private generating companies, they are relatively new because they have been set up post 2003 and they have a better PLF because if your operating cost is come, your energy charges are, if your operating cost is less, if your energy charges is less, you get priority in the MOD stack and then you are getting better offtake of your power produced. So your PLF increases. So these all affect the overall financial and operational efficiency of generating companies in the state sector or public. Then other related issue is regarding governance and decision-making process. The government generating companies, they are affected by a bureaucratic management setup and delays in decision-making related to procurement because of long approval chains. Their autonomy is limited in investment decision. Everything goes to the government and there is a committee of secretary and then there is a finance department to examine. And the HR structure is a highly rigid one, which affects their decision-making process. And these issues are not there in the private generating company. Another aspect which the private generating company take advantage of is the related party transactions. Well, when the public sector generating companies, they execute any program, they have to do the tendering and all those things. But you'll find that in the private sector, even though they show that they are doing the tendering, almost all their work is executed by related party. That means their sisters concerned, their subsidiaries, or where the proprietors are common, the directors are common. And it is virtually common in almost all the big private power plant, irrespective of any exception. So this related party transaction is one of the major ways in which the private generating companies take advantage of the situation for extracting or fixing their tariffs at a higher level and many other things. Then government companies, generating companies are very slow in shifting towards the renewable. Their exposure to coal is very high, and their performance on the renewable consumption obligation is not very good. However, the private generating companies, they are aggressively investing in the renewable and storage area, whereas the public undertakings, they are still going slow on that. So now after covering this generating company, let us also have a look at how the private transmission and government transmission companies, how they compare with each other in overall performance. So as I mentioned, all government entities, be it generation or transmission or even distribution, the investment flexibility is very limited because everything depends upon the government budget, which has slow approval. If you send the proposal today, it will be scrutinized and examined by a committee of secretary. They will recommend it. Then the finance department will provision in their budget or supplementary. And there is around 12 to 16, 18 months time lag in between the actual raising of demand and actual disbursement of funds to the transmission company. Whereas in the private transmission companies, these issues are very limited. They can approach the capital market or the private sector, private sector capital market and other areas where they can raise the fund. The project execution is also a bit lethargic in state transmission entities. The land acquisition issues are there because we have to follow through a process of acquiring the land or taking right of way, etc. Whereas in the private one, they have got a faster execution. They negotiate the compensation to the pay to the landowner, and they have got efficient procurement. And coming to the tariff part, which is the most critical, the tariff part is cost plus method. Although it is, considered to be very, very beneficial for the public sector undertakings, there is some issue related to that, and that is sometimes detrimental to the interest of the state transmission company because the approval comes at a delayed stage, and that by that time things become very expensive. Private, on the other hand, they operate under the TBC tariff-based competitive bidding regime, and they have got their tariff setting done even before the project actually begins. On the technological adoption side also, there is a disadvantage for the government companies. HR issues, we have already discussed. Land acquisition, we have already discussed. And financial health of state transmission company is not very, very good. There are some other reasons beyond that. Like, for example, in my state, the return on equity, although they are entitled for more than, say, 14-15% on their equity in deploy, they are claiming only 2 to 3% so that the tariff becomes affordable for the distribution companies, and they don't end up paying taxes, income tax on that. So they are just recovering their cost, but they are not able to generate surplus to reinvest. And then they are also, because TBCB projects are mostly for the bigger capacity, higher capacity, 220 kV or 400 kV and above. So all the bigger chunk of projects, they are shared by the private sector, and the smaller projects, 132, etc., remains mostly with the state transmission companies. So these are the relative differences between the transmission companies of the private and public. Now, let us come to the most critical segment of the power sector on which the whole financial viability of the sector hinges, which is the distribution area. Because it is the distribution which collects the money and passes on upstream to the transmission and generating companies. And in turn, the generating companies keep on paying their fuel sources, and they keep on paying their other commitments. And that's why now, when the generation is surplus, the transmission is also well connected. It is felt that the time is, very appropriate for reforming the distribution companies. Let us first try to understand what are the characteristics of currently the distribution companies. They are licensed business, unlike generation, which is delicensed. they remain as a natural monopoly and mostly bundled as unified current and carrier services, unlike transmission where carrier and content is segregated, and mostly generating companies. While private companies are there, few are there, but mostly they are located in the urban areas. And they deal with the mixed good characteristics. What is this mixed good characteristics? Because we don't know how to treat the electricity. Whether it is merit good. Merit good is which is essential for basic living needs, support for the economically weaker section, elements of public good, or it is market good. That means it is meant for private consumption, and commercial and efficiency, competition and investment are the key. You'll find that the stance of the policymakers always keeps on changing. When the election is there, the electricity is treated as a merit good. That means we'll provide electricity to everyone at a reasonable cost, free of cost, free 100 unit, 200 unit, 300. And the moment elections are over for the next 2-3 years, you'll hear that the distribution companies are not performing well. Their financial health is very poor because of inadequate. So these issues are there. And therefore, we have to go through the challenges. Nature of challenges is policy and regulatory for the distribution companies, the technological challenges, there are financial challenges, and governance related challenges. We'll go by one with all these. So when we compare the government distribution companies with the private distribution companies, the major difference is the license area. You'll find that the government distribution companies are spread all over. They have got a diversified geographical coverage comprising of urban, semi-urban and rural areas, and very long length of network, making their service delivery very challenging. On the other hand, you'll find that the private distribution company mostly are located in the urban areas, municipal areas, except for now with Odisha has recently, the Tatas have recently entered into a diversified geographical area where they have undertaken this operation. So second key difference is that the load profile and consumer mix of the state generating companies is very skewed, and you'll find that agricultural load is there, domestic load is there, industry is there, everything is there. There are mixed feeders, and there are level of cross subsidization because the agriculture sector or the rural domestic where the capacity and willingness to pay is limited, they have to be charge a very lower tariff as compared to their capacity. Either the state government has to provide that, even if after providing the state government, if we do not reach that threshold, then we have to provide the cross subsidy. So these challenges are there in the state distribution company. But the private distribution company, because they are mostly located in the urban areas, and urban areas have high paying capacity, their per capita income is very high, their consumer capacity to pay is very high. There is virtually nil agricultural load, so they don't have to do any cross subsidization. So, and their load profile is also very strong and revenue based, and the load factor is also very based. So that makes their system very and efficient as well as remunerative vis-a-vis the public distribution companies. Then because of these challenges, the capacity of the distribution company to go in for technological adoption like smart metering, SCADA or feeder segregation, etc., and using the IT, AI, ML tools is also very limited. Whereas the private discoms, they aggressively use the technology to address their distribution challenges. And in this capital issue we have discussed for both the generation as well as transmission, this also remains more or less similar. Then we have got financial issue relating to the subsidy heavily reliant on subsidy to be provided by the state government, which sometimes comes, sometimes doesn't come. It is delayed, it is inadequate. That keeps the cash flow very tight. The the government distribution company, they have to borrow from banks and other things to keep their operations going on, because they have to keep on paying the generating companies within, say, 45 days or 60 days, whatever is their PPA arrangement. And their cycle of collection from the consumer is there, but still there is a gap which was to be funded by the state government through subsidy. That doesn't take place. So they fell into that sort of trouble. Then the high legacy PPA costs are there, the standard assets are there, there are poor billing and collection efficiency related. Because of these issues, the billing and collection also gets affected. So when you do not collect whatever you have sold, either through billing or through other means, then there are impact on your cash flow. Plus your power purchase cost is also very high, because we procured large quantum of power based on estimation that the demand is going to rise, but that demand did not came. So you are stuck up with a PPA which has to be serviced. That's a fixed asset. The fixed cost has to be serviced, and that becomes a standard asset and burdening the distribution company. AT&C is very high in most of the distribution company. This is the single largest factor attributing to the financial distress of the distribution company. Why it is high? Because it is spread over the large geographical area. The network length goes up. The high volume to low volume ratio is very adverse. And more is the length of the low voltage, the losses are high, because it's high as the low voltage supply is always associated with high T&D losses. And add to that, billing and collection inefficiency raises the AT&C losses. Then because of the large geographical coverage of area, there is a delay in the fault and repair and other service to be provided, which creates a bad image of the government distribution companies. But these factors are not present in the private companies, since they are located in the urban centric areas. There are many consumers in the same high-rise building. So even if there is a fault, one team can address all the issues promptly and quickly. So you'll always find whenever the rating or grading of distribution companies are there, the private distribution companies are always at the top, because of the factors that they are operating in a much small geographical area, and their load density is high, their consumer density is high. So they are able to manage it much more efficiently. There is no agricultural load associated with that. And they also are efficient. That cannot be denied. They use the technology-enabled services. They use drones and other things to keep a check on the theft and other things. So they have got some better reputation because of that. Governance is the key area. It is not the, I always say that it is not the ownership, that is whether it is public or private, it is the governance which matters. If you are operating in a very efficient governance structure, you'll be very your distribution company will be very well performing. And it can be seen that even while private distribution companies are faring well in the list of distribution companies doing well prepared by REC, there are many public or the government distribution companies also in that, and they have started performing well in the terms of standard of performance or realization of their billing and collection efficiency. So it is the governance which is critical. But if we are unable to check the theft, reduce the corruption, efficiently procure the power, these issues keep hampering the reputation as well as credibility of the government distribution companies. Then quickly I'll go through. I hope, yes, there is sufficient time. There is delay in consistent tariff fixation. I have already discussed about that. Then RPO fixation is arbitrary. This is one thing which is happening all across the power sector. The renewable purchase obligation, which was set up earlier, now it is called renewable consumption obligation. When this Energy Conservation Act has been amended in 2023, and it has been replaced, RPO has been replaced with RCO. They call it now renewable consumption obligation. And they have kept a very high figure I'll just show the slide how high it is in a few slides later, but that is one problem. Then political interference affects the regulatory autonomy for the distribution companies. Performance incentive is not there. Even if they perform, there is hardly any incentive like private sector gives. Major reason of the public sector unviability also has a reason because of the government sponsored schemes. Unfortunately, no one highlights or addresses these issues. Saubhagya scheme, which is a well-intentioned scheme to provide universal access to all residents of the state or the country, it was launched. So while the distribution companies are expected to run as a commercially viable entities, but who were the beneficiary who were given connection under the Saubhagya scheme? I can share my example from the state of Uttar Pradesh. Before this scheme was launched, the state of Uttar Pradesh had roughly 2 crore consumers. And during this scheme, roughly 1.6 crore consumers were added. And out of that 1.6 crore consumers, 1.3 crore consumers were lifeline consumers. That means they were consuming less than 100 units of electricity every month, and their tariff was rupees 3 per unit against the average cost of supply of roughly 6.5 or 7.5, 7 and 7.5. So you can imagine this is a well-intentioned scheme. Government provided capital support upfront, but whatever it provided, more than twice of that goes by of revenue loss to the distribution company. So that makes the revenue viability of the distribution company very, very precarious in the low income states like Bihar or Uttar Pradesh, where per capita income is less. When your per capita income is less, what happened? It is a double-edged sword. Per capita income not only affects the individual's capacity to pay, it also limits the state's capacity to pay, because the state gets its revenue as a tax to GDP. So if your per capita is say 1 lakh and your tax to GDP ratio is 10%, so the state will get 10,000 rupees per person to service its all obligation for a common citizen. But in state like say Maharashtra or Goa or Delhi has got 5 lakhs, Goa has got 8 lakhs per capita income. So there the 10% is 80,000. So 10,000 and 80,000. The capacity of the state also is affected because of this low per capita income. So the low income states are affected drastically. The RDSS is another scheme which is creating a debt trap for, especially the smart metering one. It's creating a debt trap for the distribution companies. I'll just, because I'll answer it in the question and answer session, because it is a very deep issue. Shortage of trained manpower, recruitment, somewhere either it is surplus or deficit, but the training is missing most of the places. Skill upgradation. Now, technological challenges is infrastructure, adverse high voltage to low voltage. I have already factored in poor load factor in rural areas and mixed feeders. AT&C losses I've already covered. VRE, I have got lack of figure segregation, resolution, resource adequacy challenge. Yes. Now, this is a new thing which has been introduced and is a very good thing, because the distribution companies are expected to do their load forecasting in a scientific manner, consider all the historical related growth CAGR of their different consumer category growth, their population increase, their income increase, their socioeconomic condition, that efficiency of the technological items, how it is affecting the demand, weather-related changes, then issues like your electric vehicle or decarbonization of the industries, etc., how they are going to impact your load. Because electricity, of the total energy required for the economy, electricity currently meets only about 18-19% of the energy need, and remaining are met by other primary sources like petroleum, gas, etc., etc. So when we are decarbonizing, the mobility load, the petrol or diesel which are driving the transport sector, their load is gradually shifting on the grid. Similarly, industry, when they are decarbonizing, their load is coming to the grid. So that demand is to be estimated in a proper manner, and then the generation capacity has to be created or procured or acquired in a manner so that there is very little excess or shortfall, or otherwise you will be stuck up either in the power deficit scenario, or there will be stranded capacity because you have procured the asset which are not to be used, so that you keep on paying them. That adds to the financial burden. Then high cost of RE banking, net metering. There is a misconception that renewable banking is cost-free. It has got a huge cost on the distribution company. It was okay when we had got very little renewable energy coming into the grid. But as the energy VRE, especially the solar and the renewable part, is growing up, this has become a major issue. And the government is forcing the distribution company to provide the RE banking. They have introduced green energy open access regulation, providing RE banking or net metering even. Even net metering is a very, very severe financial loss for the distribution company. While it is serving a greater good to the whole economy as such that everything is decarbonized and there is a reduction in the transmission investment because the load and the generation is taking place co-located way. But for the distribution company, it is a drag because it has to keep on meeting the demand when the solar is not there. So that asset has to be there, which will be, instead of using it for 24 hours, it will be used only for 16 hours. So it becomes lesser remunerative for them. It has got a cost. Transformer overloading because of data analytics lack and forecasting issue these are there. Smart metering associated with smart grid, cyber security. These are the challenges the distribution companies are facing. Then imbalanced consumer mix with the disproportionate share of consumption by subsidized category is taking place because of Saubhagya, as I mentioned. Cross subsidization by C&I consumers leading to their grid defection. Now, this is again a situation which is adversely affecting the distribution company. What is happening that because of Saubhagya, the number of cross subsidized consumer category in states like UP, Bihar, etc. have increased. So, and government doesn't have enough resources to provide subsidy adequately for them. So they have to be cross subsidized. But the number of industrial or commercial consumer remaining same. So their burden goes up. If their burden goes up, so the tariff, the net impact is that the tariff becomes unattractive for them and they defect to open access. It's like, why I should pay 10 rupees when I can get power from 6 rupees through open access. So this cross subsidization is a double-edged sword, which is affecting the distribution company, and it is being promoted through the rules or the policies which we are framing. Accumulated regulatory assets and high debt burden is there. Inadequate financing not coming in time or delayed. Poor payment compliance. Because of these financial factors and other factors, it is not that the government companies are doing exceptionally good or bad. But whatever they are doing, it is not perceived as a very high quality service from the consumer end. They say that while we are paying so much of tariff, the quality of service which is expected, the standard of performance which is expected is not up to the mark. So the general credibility and the reputation of the public distribution company is not very high. And it also gets adversely affected because of issues like corruption, which is there in many states. The developed states do not have because they have got adequate per capita capacity, but in the low income state, it is quite prevalent. In states like Bihar, UP, etc., Chhattisgarh, etc., there are major incidences of corruption in the distribution sector. Then the government also promotes bad behavior of consumers by frequently bringing general tariff waiver schemes. So whenever the election is going to come, you'll find the states are designing a free power, free power. So what the consumers have, they have also become smart. They said 6 months or 1 year before they stop paying, that it will be waived when the next round of election is going to come. So that bad behavior is also hitting the distribution companies. Because of these factors, the consumers also resist paying up for the fuel and power purchase compensatory adjustment or the true up of ARR. They don't want any hike in the power because they see that if you're not providing us good quality of service, why pay? And there is a general delinquency in the timely payment of bill or default of bill payment. Reputational challenge, I have already said, governance deficit, corruption, low consumer satisfaction, suboptimal consumer to employee ratio, inadequate IT, lack of motivation. Yes, this is a small slide to show RPO trajectory, the renewable consumption obligation and the trajectory. Say in 24-25, all the distribution companies, their total consumption share of renewable should be about 29.91, about 30%. Why this is very, very important to note, and it progressively goes up to 43% by 2029-30. But what is the total generation of renewable in the overall electricity generation? It is only 22.41. So that means that while the generation is 22.41, the obligation is almost 30%. So except for few surplus states like maybe Gujarat, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, or Rajasthan, rest all states will remain non-compliant of renewable consumption or renewable obligation. This is a very critical point which very few people try to focus on, and I thought it should be known to the general people. So Bhagya, I have already done. I'll not dwell much on that. RDSS metering, I'll just quickly touch upon. So Bhagya I have covered. RDSS metering. Now RDSS metering, the government has designed this 1.5 lakh crore scheme as a loan to the distribution companies. Mind you, the distribution companies are already in a very bad financial situation, and they kept a project of 6,000 per meter provision and 900 as a subsidy for this, which is about 15%. Now the issue is, the objective is limited to collection efficiency. Most of the distribution companies have got their collection efficiency more than 80 to 85%. So that means you can improve only the remaining 15%. What is happening is these smart meters are only replacing the existing meters. So there is no net benefit to the distribution company, because earlier the consumer was also paying without the smart meter. Now also the consumer is paying with the smart meter, because it is not making any difference, because it would make difference only if you install the meter either to a consumer's premises who doesn't have any meter, or if he doesn't makes the payment. In that case, you are remotely able to disconnect. If you are disconnecting that remotely, then the revenue will not come, whether it is smart meter or whatever. And these smart meters are being installed on a TOTEX model. That means pay as you go. Every month, the AMI, the meter service provider, will generate the bill, and whatever you collect, the average rate is about 90 rupees plus GST, about 108 rupees. 108 rupees will be paid. In a state like UP, where 1/3 is lifeline consumer and the consumption is 100 rupees and 3 rupees is per unit rate, even everyone consumes 100 unit, then 300 is the maximum bill he pays. Out of that, 108 rupees, that means almost 35%, goes towards the smart metering cost. The AT&C loss said is 21%. So basically, to save 21%, you are losing 33% by way of smart meter charges. That is not the only thing. There are many other things which are there. So I think nobody gave a deep thought of how to design this, where to implement it. They said universal. That means all out of 30 crore, excluding the agriculture, all other will be done. So there are very detailed exercise I had done, but I'll not go, because of paucity of time, I'll not go much into detail on that here. But I thought I must advise all of you to go and have a deeper look on the financial viability of, mind you, the 6,000 crore per smart meter project cost, which is in the REC RDSS scheme. In most of the state, the average cost has come out to be 8,500. So it is not 6,000, it is 8,500. So the cost is higher, it is borrowing. The distribution companies are already in a bad financial situation. They have been borrowing this money in anticipation that their revenue will go up, but the revenue is not going up because it is being installed against the same consumer premises who were paying earlier. So there is no relative. So this is one issue which has to be kept in mind, that how schemes are also affecting the distribution company. What else is left? These are general issues. I'll not. Yeah, way forward and policies. I'll quickly, within 5-7 minutes, try to wind up. Issues which you should be cautious about is normative and cost reflective issue. We'll always find that the schemes say that we should have more and more cost reflective issue. Cost reflective is good for the distribution company because it ensures that whatever is the expenditure which is incurred is recovered in a reasonable manner. That's why more and more voice is coming in support of the cost reflective. But it is not very good for the consumers, because then it becomes, the regulatory framework becomes only accounting sort of a structure, that whatever is the cost, you divide by energy and then you get the recovery. There has to be normative one. That means the efficiency has to be factored in the tariff so that the distribution company makes effort to recover in an efficient manner, perform in an efficient manner. Otherwise, inefficiency will keep on passing in a cost reflective manner. Second aspect for distribution companies are very critical is cost sharing of controllable versus uncontrollable factors. One should keep in mind that there are factors which are uncontrollable. So that should be definitely a pass through to the distribution companies. But the controllable factors are those which can be managed and reduced through the efficient performance of the distribution company. Then the benefit part of it, and the substantial part of it, should also go to the distribution company. So that what we call is incentive and sharing of efficiency gain. So these are the regulatory concepts that should be promoted. Realistic RPS trajectory we have already discussed. Oh. Price and value of electricity, I think this is a different concept. We do not have much time to discuss that here. Way forward technical load optimization. how we can better manage the distribution company, including its technology and finances. The concepts like load optimization, demand aggregation should be introduced, demand response should be introduced. You will find that every state has got almost 10 to 15% of its peak demand occurring only for less than 2% of the time. Now, for meeting that peak demand, it is expected to procure PPA or the power, which is unutilized for maybe 90-95% of the time blocks in a year. So instead of having that sort of arrangement, if we have a scheme of demand response, which can offer incentives to those who are causing that peak to reduce that demand at that time, that works out a very cheaper or economic way of doing that. But unfortunately, neither the regulatory framework is pushing for that, nor the central government or policies, etc., are coming forward for that. Then schemes like energy storage or storage as a service can be, value-added service can be taken up by the distribution companies. Concept like virtual power plant, where the aggregation of flexible load is there, which works as a renewable source, that can work. Peer-to-peer energy transactions can be promoted. These are the value-added ways of improvising the distribution companies' technical and financial challenges. Improved billing prepaid, these are well known. Hybrid PPA is one concept which can be used for future power procurement, where you have the option of taking mixer of things. Data monetization, you have got large number of data, consumer data, where they have installed smart meters. Say my state has installed, say, 10 lakh smart meters. For example, I'm giving you 10 lakhs every day has got 96 time blocks multiplied for 1 year and multiplied with the number of consumers. That much volume of data is generated. That data can be monetized in a very efficient manner, subject to data privacy laws and cyber securities laws. So those concepts may be further propagated to behind the meter services. Like, for example, rooftop solar is there. Behind the meter services will do the advisory to the consumers that how they should manage their devices optimally so that their bill gets reduced, and whatever is the reduction, the distribution company can charge as a part of fee, etc., etc. What is data monetization is, you can go through, it is a long subject, but I just thought I'll pass through this. I think if I have got 5 more minutes, I'll skip this because behind the meter, I'll share this PowerPoint so that people can go through this at leisure and contact me whenever if they have issues to discuss. Energy, I've discussed demand response, smart home IoT. Yes. Now, another critical item which is very much discussed these days is that government has got its development agenda that will achieve the developed country status by 2047. Now, in the developed countries, if you see their electricity consumption, it varies minimum from 6,000 kilowatt hours in countries like, say, Iberia, that is Spain or Portugal or United Kingdom, and goes up to, say, 16,000 per unit in other developed countries, some of them in Scandinavia or US and other. So right now we are at about 1,300 units. So to reach 6,000, that means the electricity consumption and generation in the country has to go up almost 4 to 5 times in next 20 years, 2047, 22 years. This is a massive asking rate, much more than our historical CAGR. So for that, huge investment is required. With this growth ambition, we have to also meet the energy transition requirement. That means most of our energy sources will be non-fossil fuel based. So how it can be made? It can be made only if the distribution companies are financially efficient, they are generating adequate resources, internal accruals are sufficient to fund that, because everything cannot be funded by the government. So they need private sources of investment. So it is now conceptualized that let the distribution company be privatized so that the burden sharing is done with the private sector companies. Private sector is considered to be efficient. They can bring in additional resources. They can bring technological changes. They can bring a lot of things which are there. So 2-3 models of privatizations are being discussed. 100%, 51-49, which is a PPP model, or the carrier content segregation. So 100%, everything is taken up by a private, which is considered to be very efficient, well managed. There is no government financial burden. Risk investment, private investment comes in infrastructure, although the monopoly remains, and it is private. It is politically sensitive and needs a very strong regulatory framework. Like, for example, you will find that, say, Bombay has got parallel licensing also. Adani and Tatas are there, and both are 100% private. So, but the tariff there is one of the highest because they are maintaining the reliability, they are supplying power to everyone. But since the citizens of or the consumers of Mumbai, their paying capacity is very high, they don't mind paying a high tariff, but they want a very reliable and quality supply. So 100% privatization model has got those type of features which can be considered. Second is 51-49 PPP partnership, which is there in Delhi, which is there in Orissa, or maybe 1 or 2 places. And now UP is also contemplating PPP 51-49. So it is a mixture, is a balance. Although the private management remains with the management remains with the private company, but the state is also involved. It indirectly tries to influence the things, and it is slightly lesser politically sensitive than the full privatization. And the ultimate one could be the carrier and content segregation, when the distribution is split into supply and distribution, and there is a distribution service operator. Like all the network industry, if you see, they are already split in the carrier and content. That means, for example, take airport and airlines. It is segregated. If you see telecom, radio waves is with the DOT, and the service providers are the telecom operators like Airtel, Jio, etc., etc. Similarly, gas. The gas material is supplied by someone else. The pipeline is of the authority, GAIL or someone. So carrier railways in the Western countries, you'll find the railways is also carrier and content. There are private trains running on the tracks. So everywhere there, the network industry is there. You'll find that carrier content is segregated, and the carrier, the state entity may remain as a carrier, but the content supplier may be many, so that there is a competition, because it is a competition only which will bring in efficiency. So that it is based on that context. We had some efforts earlier in 2012, and a bill was introduced, the earlier electricity amendment bill was introduced, but somehow it could not move forward. So these are the basic 3 privatization model which can be considered for private investment to come in the distribution company. I think I have covered almost everything, and I think I'll stop here, and I'll take any questions if you have. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, and I think this is what I wanted to share with you today. Over to you.
Thank you, sir, for an insightful session. Now, dear engineers, you can unmute yourself and ask any questions uh, to the honorary guest. So the mic goes to you. Sir, this is Vivek. I myself
Yes.
have a doubt. In one slide, I saw that if it is private, there is no fear for, fear for doing a tariff hike. So, does it means that the regulatory commissions are afraid of private players and are leaning towards private players and are very strict? Are moving are not showing any leniency to private players. I mean any leniency to public players.
No, it depends upon. Actually, there is a one cannot say that it is a general rule. Some may be doing, some may not be doing, but uh, private private distribution companies have got a greater influence on the regulatory system. This is a fact. You'll find that mostly the private their success rate in winning the court cases is very high. Their they challenge the orders wherever they find, and they have got a deep pocket and they work very hard to get through their objectives. So in that way, they are very, very effective as compared to the public genetic companies or transmission or distribution companies. So that aspect has to be acknowledged. I hope I was able to answer your question.
Yes, sir, it's clear. Dear engineers, if you have any doubt, please raise your hand and unmute yourself, and please ask your questions.
So you said you will elaborate more on RDSS smart metering scheme. Do you just elaborate on how it's loss making on the what, how it causes a financial burden on the uh, distribution companies?
I missed, I think there was some sort of cracking in your voice. Can you repeat your question once again slowly?
In your slide, in your introduction, on your slide, you said that smart metering
Yes,
will cause financial burden for the
yes, yes,
distribution companies.
yes. I'll explain once more. It's a borrowed program. So the distribution companies are expected to borrow funds from RDSS scheme. Say any particular distribution company, it is borrowing fund, it has to repay its loan to the financial institution from where it has borrowed. And to repay, it has got payment obligation for many other entities. First of all, its highest priority is to pay to the generating companies. It has priority to pay its equipment suppliers, transformer, wire, poles, meters, etc., everything, and it has to pay to its staff, employee, its overhead costs, and everything. So when you borrow additional, you must generate more because that additionality has to be funded from over and above. Otherwise, what will happen if your income remains the same? You will stop paying someone else and then pay to this one. So that is what I'm saying. It is not generating additional resources because the collection efficiency is already 85%. So that means you can improve upon only 15%. But the obligation which you have taken is for more than 80, 85, 90%, which is not going to give you additional revenue. For example, I'm a consumer and there are many like me who are paying their bill regularly. So with smart meter or without smart meter, the revenue income of distribution company is going to remain same. But if the distribution company is borrowing money, replacing my meter with a smart meter, then it will not be able to service the borrowing cost of that smart meter. This is what I'm trying to say.
Sir, as per the regulations, all consumer to be install the smart meter. Now it ऐसा करेगा तो अभी complete electricity licensee distribution license should replace the existing meter, no? So government support is required, no, for that.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. It is not funded by government, it is borrowed. If the government has given this mandate, then it should also fund that. But if you try to understand, power sector is a sector where it is consumer funded. Everything is funded by consumer. And government only gives equity to the distribution companies on which return on equity is taken. So everything goes to the tariff. So ultimately, it is not taxpayers' money which is going into this. It is only the ratepayer. And the subsidy of 900 rupees, which I talked about, this smart meter, incidentally, government is collecting a GST of more than 2,300 on the smart meters. First, 18% is on the value of the smart meter. Second, another is on the value addition of the services, software services, security, data management, etc. So government is collecting roughly 2,300 per smart meter installed, but giving only 1,500. So in this whole operation, it is government which gets more, consumer ends up getting nothing, distribution company losing out money.
In Kerala, about 98% revenue collection efficiency is above 98%. And billing efficiency is above 99%. But we have to purchase the power, 70% of the power from the market. For by installing the smart meter, we can reduce the expenses, no expenditure for purchasing the power.
How will reduce the purchase? How? Can you tell me how?
We can monitor exact that consumption details. No, presently distribution we are compared the last year's consumption, then purchasing. From the smart meter itself, the data will be available. No.
Correct. So, the data will be available. That let us try to understand. There are technical advantages of smart meter. There is no doubt about it. That it quantifies the whole consumption pattern. It gives you a whole broader picture of at what stage of time, on what day of time, how much energy is being consumed, etc. But the distribution companies have got already PPS time, tied up. So you are buying power whether they are consuming or not. So you have to pay for the capacity at least. Even if not the electricity, at least for the capacity you have to pay. That cost is a sunk cost, number one. Number two, your paying capacity comes out of only he was consuming and not paying. But if he was consuming and paying earlier, then you got no additional benefit. You may have the data, but if the consumer was paying you earlier, even with an ordinary meter, and if he is paying you now also with the smart meter, what is the difference in your total revenue? That is the question I'm saying. Anyway, I'm not discouraging anyone for.
Okay, sir. After both, dhanyawad, sir. It's a very wonderful session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, sir. This is Sanjay Khandelwal, Chief Engineer from Chhattisgarh State Power Distribution Company.
Correct.
I just want to ask you, how do you see the impact of EV on the health of distribution companies? Because the load of EV charging, even at for domestic vehicles, is about 7 kilowatt. It is more than 3 to 4 times of a single AC. So this is going to put a huge load on the grid, and we have to match with that. How will it
Correct.
impact the health of the distribution company?
Correct. There was a slide in my presentation which I quickly rushed through. I thought it is not pertinent. The concept is value of electricity. Value means, we get always confused with the cost of electricity with the value of electricity. Like, for example, land. I'll give you an example. Land. If the land is agricultural land related in rural area, it has got low value. If it is located in urban area, then if it's located near, say, road, it has got high value. Even in urban areas, if it's the residential, it has got different value. If it is commercial, then a different value. So the value depends upon A, location, B, type of use, and C, time of use. So the tariff has to be also evolving because your generation is evolving, your generation is dynamic. It is not the statics because of renewable coming in, the solar and wind, everything is coming up. So that concept has to go into the retail tariff as well. We need to have dynamic tariff. That means if you charge your EV, passenger EV during the peak hours, my tariff will be 16 rupees. If you charge during the lean hours, it will be 4 rupees. So unless until those concepts are there, but unfortunately the government prescribes that you should charge lowest to the EV so that it promotes. That is a thing that you are subsidizing other sector through electricity consumers. So that concept gradually has to go in the system that we need to have dynamic pricing of electricity, which varies from the time.
So,
And for that, yes, for that you need smart meters. For that you need smart
Yes.
meters. Not for, you don't need smart meters to make, the objective which is in the RDSS to improve the collection efficiency.
Sir, thank you, sir.
Sir, one small question, sir.
Yes, please.
Yes, sir. So Kerala is a purely domestic-based load we are having. Purely domestic-based load is our high demand. So in that context, when you were saying that we can give incentive for demand response, because as a huge power, we are an aggressive power purchaser, almost purchasing over 70% of our demand. So why not in that context? How do smart meter come in, sir? When you
Again, I said, you have to see the demand elasticity of the consumer. Maybe consumers number may be high. In UP also the number of consumers is very high. But there is always a segment in each and every state of the consumer mix which can be flexibilized. That means you can provide them incentive to shift their load. I don't know the demand pattern of your state, whether what time the peak is occurring, whether it is during daytime or nighttime, because the strategy for deployment of demand response changes. If it is during solar hour, then the strategy will be different. If it is during the non-solar hour, the strategy will be different. But then you approach that particular segment of consumer to start with. It has to be C&I consumer. You offer them an incentive which compensates them from any transformational changes in their consumption pattern which they have to bring in. And then it is a win-win for them, for both of us. So that is how it has to be designed. There is no one-size-fits-all approach in the demand response. It has to be tailor-made for each type of load profile for every state, depending upon its consumer mix, its generation mix, both.
Yes, sir. That is where we are asking whether smart meter will provide us more visibility.
Yes, it will provide. Technical benefit of smart meters, in fact. What I'm saying is financial. Financial will also improve. Financial benefit of smart meter will improve if you have a dynamic pricing. That's what I have been challenging the objective of RDSS. The objective of RDSS should have been smart grid, not collection efficiency. The moment you bring the objective of smart grid, then it becomes a very, very powerful and implementing tool. but they have limited it to
Financial.
production efficiency.
Yeah.
You need to get that.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thanks, sir.
Yes.
Sir, I am from Andhra Pradesh, sir. There is one challenge from the general public. If we go for a smart metering or prepaid metering, the DISCOM is charging the cost of meter on them. In that particular situation, how we can able to convince the consumer the smart metering and how the updated technology will be useful for the benefit of consumer? In one word or one sentence, how we can able to meet that challenge, sir? Thank you.
Okay, smart meters, legally, if you ask me, consumers are not obligated to pay for that. When I was regulator in UP, my DISCOM approached me, asked for funding from charging it from the consumers. I said, no, you cannot charge because the consumers have already paid the meter. You are not taking their consent. You are unilaterally changing on the basis of some guidelines issued by the ministry. Ministry doesn't have mandate to issue such guidelines. It is the regulator's domain, and it is standards are being prescribed. Only the standards are being prescribed by CEA that meter has to be conforming to what standards. But prepaid mode making compulsory for all consumers has been prescribed. So the common sense is one who causes must pay. So if you are prescribing, then it should have been paid by the government, or if you are getting it funded through a scheme, you are trying to show financial viability of that scheme, then the distribution company should pay. So in that sense, I find it difficult to counter any argument to support that it can be recovered from a consumer.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, my name is Ryan. I'm from Kerala. So in that context, if we are installing those meters on our distribution transformers, and also there are some of the payments from government departments were also being delayed. So installing meters on DTRs will give us an approach on transformer status and
Correct.
yeah.
No,
So
transformer. I was not talking. I was only talking about the consumer smart meter distribution. Transformer, the feeder, distributor, they all are essential. They have to be and should be. At whatever cost, the distribution company must install them. It is necessary.
One more thing, like anywhere in India, where we have uses behind the meter concept in the regulatory framework.
Not yet, not yet. It's an evolving area. It is being used in some countries outside. But again, the precondition is, as I mentioned, flexibilization of demand and dynamic pricing. So unfortunately, in our country, it's only at the wholesale price. If you go to the exchanges, the time block wise price of purchase of power is dynamic only in the exchanges, in the wholesale. In the PPAs, it is not there. And it is in the retail side, that is consumer side, it is not there. Time of the day is there for certain type of CNI consumers in some of the states. But what we need is full-fledged time of the use or time of the dynamic pricing.
Okay, sir. One more thing. Recently we have seen that MCX is going to introduce derivatives. So is there any regulatory framework on that regard, like whether they can just go and do this? Because now power purchases are already happening, but this derivatives is a totally different thing. So
yes,
is there any regulatory framework on that?
Yes, let me explain the background. I think I'll wind up in 5 minutes because I have another meeting. There is a forward market where there is a physical interchange of power that is within the jurisdiction of Central Electricity Authority. Central Electricity Regulatory Commission, CERC. So you might have heard the word TAM, term ahead market, 1 month, 3 months, 11 days, and all those things. So that physical, where the power is exchanged in between. And then there is a financial derivative. So where there is no power exchange, it is only the settlement of the financial price. So that is within the financial domain, that is within the jurisdictional domain of SEBI. The security, SEBI is a body which regulates the financial instrument. So
Yes,
the
sir.
SEBI has given the permission in consultation with CERC. There is a joint working group which jointly discusses and works out. So they have given this permission to roll out monthly base load derivatives. So it is under regulatory framework of SEBI.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
I think I'll close here. If I'll take one last question and then close.
Sir, I heard only one distribution company in the entire nation were about 56 to 57 companies running on profit. Rest of the companies are not running with losses, sir. What might be the reason, sir? Is it true?
You're talking about public companies or private companies also?
Private companies only, sir.
No, private companies, I think they are in loss.
Mixed together.
Sorry, they are in the profit.
I'm not sure about that. Mixed together, I think 57 to 58 companies across the nation. Total discount. I read in a paper. If you are aware of that, if you can. No, sir, no issue.
I have actually, to be frank, I have not checked up, but I know the profit status of many companies, Adani's or Tata's, or they keep on declaring their profitability. Since it is a company which is mixed, so I have to see the distribution operation of that, because Tata Power, for example, has got many subsidiaries with it. So maybe I might have to recheck against about the distribution aspect of it. But the companies are in profit otherwise.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Even government companies are in profit. I know a few of them. Thank you very much for giving this opportunity, and it was really pleasure to speak to such a large number of audience. And I hope I was able to address the topic in a very transparent and fair manner. And I'll be happy to get any, if you have got any more questions, you can email me or contact me. I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Sir, I would like to call Mr. Sabuti Joseph, Vice President, KSCB Engineers Association, to express the vote of thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Myself, Sabu here. On behalf of KSCB Engineers Association, I extend a heartfelt vote of thanks to all who contributed to this section of our 71st webinar. We are especially grateful to our distinguished keynote speaker, Sri Judge Pratap Singh, IAS, the State Election Committee, UP, and former Chairman, UP-ERC. His in-depth and thought-provoking address on the challenges of the government electricity companies at the advent of the private players provided valuable insight into the evolving energy sector and the role of public utilities in the competitive landscape. So, your vast experience and clarity of thoughts have deeply enriched today's section. We are also thankful to our participants for the enthusiastic engagement and thoughtful questions which added to the discussion. And here we from KCB Engineers Association thank the distinguished members from Himachal Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, West Bengal, Andhra Pradesh, Rajasthan, Orissa, Maharashtra, and Gujarat, especially which been the Sri Sanjay from Chhattisgarh, Sri Lugesh Thakur from HP, Sri Das Gupta from West Bengal, and Srimati Nandini Bhattacharya from West Bengal, Sri Ajay Mathur from Udaipur, Mr. HP Shah from Gujarat, Mr. Madhu Kumar from Andhra Pradesh, and the distinguished members from Maharashtra and Orissa, and all the participants who have participated and made this event successful. And thank you all once again. We look forward to your continued support. Thank you. Thank you very much.